Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Unposted podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're on episode 12, and today we have the one, the only, George Lambriodes. Woo!
Yes.
And if you don't know who George is, if you're new, to following Unposted or just my life in general, George is my boyfriend.
Yep.
So I feel like it was about time that he come on. I was like, let's wait a little bit, but yeah. I've been wanting to have him on, so I'm super happy that you're finally here with me, as if we don't sit and talk all day long. Yep. But I do know you have a really good story to share.
Some would say, I guess.
I feel like, we both have had a little bit crazy lives, finding our path and everything.
Yes.
And I feel like you'll have some good things to share with our viewers. So boyfriend, but also he's the one that kind of sets up all the cameras. He does all the BTS situation here. He's the tech guy. So I would not be able to do this podcast without him. And then he sets up all my editing. So I'm able to go in and edit. So definitely without him, this podcast would not be happening. So we have to give a big shout out to George.
You're welcome.
But I think we should get right into it.
All right.
And you guys, we're also going to be having a podcast together. It's a relationship podcast called Boyfriend's Closet, coming out soon. We have recorded a few episodes with that, and we're excited to.
Super excited.
It's going to be a lot more lighthearted than this one, and like just fun and silly. So make sure to stay tuned and on the lookout for that. But so today,
all right,
George, we're talking about like kind of finding our identity.
Yeah.
And I feel like, at least for me, I've had a hard time finding that after high school. Mainly because I feel like there's a lot of things out in the world that like, I look at, I'm like, oh, should I be doing that? Should I be doing that? And it's hard to like tune into the voice, like your own voice as to like what you want to do and what you should be doing.
Yeah.
So I know you've done a million things in entertainment.
Definitely.
So for our listeners, go ahead and kind of tell them in a short little snippet of like what you do now. What's your...
Okay.
So then we can go backwards from there.
Yeah. What do we do? I fancy myself an editor. Is what I've been doing professionally for the past 5 years. Now it's such a hodgepodge of everything. Video creator. I've been kind of on the post side of things, movies, all sorts of productions, docs, music videos, you name it. Now that we have our own gear in GL7 Studios, now we're really, a full-fledged production company, and I'm taking much more of a liking to the camera work. But on top of that, what else do we do?
Oh, by the way, if you're new here, GL7 Studios is our production company.
Yes.
So we, do all the production and post.
Yeah.
If you're new here and don't know that, we have a business together, so we're constantly working together.
I pretty much handle the technical side of GL7 Studios is first and foremost.
On our website, we have... it's the creative queen and then the technical king. That's together we create GL7 Studios.
It's the best way to sum it up. Yeah. That's what I do now.
Right. Guys, he's an amazing editor. Obviously very good at everything.
Thank you.
Like you're creative as well, but your editing skills, I think, take top tier gold. Yeah. The gold medal, as like what the Olympics would say.
If there was an Olympic
editing, you would take gold.
I appreciate that.
So editor now, but I know that you've dabbled in a million things to get here.
It's taken me a long, windy road to get here.
So take me back to high school when you decided you were going to go to college, which is definitely not in line with what you're doing now.
No. In high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was floating. I was just not really into anything. I played basketball and I was into sports and that sort of thing, but I knew I wasn't going to be, tall enough to pursue college basketball. So, but I was like, my parents were like, you have to go to school for something. I guess I was into fashion. I would
You like sneakers? I mean, you could
I was
tell.
a big sneakerhead. Yeah, I was very artistic. I come from a super artistic family. My mom and my dad both like to draw and paint, and my dad plays instruments and that sort of thing. So I guess when it came time to pick a major for college, I kind of just guessed and said, I'm going to go to school for fashion design to design sneakers. Right. And very quickly, I realized that I was not cut out for fashion design.
and so whenever you picked fashion design or just college in general, that was your only option, was to go to college.
Yeah, I had to go for something, and I didn't know, I didn't have the brain capacity to think of these million paths my life could go down. I was just like, I like fashion, I like sneakers, maybe I could be a designer. It just at the time
and we're
felt
so
like
young.
It made sense.
And 18 years old, I didn't go to college, and it's the best decision I think I've ever made in my life.
Yeah.
And some kids know what they want to do, but it's hard to be around that.
I was forced to pick something.
Yeah.
And that sucks. But I ended up, there was only 2 schools I applied to, Albright, which is a big college in Reading, PA, and then Philadelphia University, which is a textile school that's now Thomas Jefferson University, but a pretty small college in Philly. And out of the 2 options, I was like, man, I want to get out of Reading. I want to go to Philly and, explore a little bit of the bigger city, even though it was outside of the city. It was just a beautiful school. And I did that my freshman year, and then sophomore year, the very first week of classes, I had all these super long 3-4 hour long design classes, and I was the only guy in all my classes, the only straight guy at least, and it was just so
you didn't feel like it was
I
your
felt
place.
so out of place, and I was just like, and that's when I made the shift to switch into fashion merchandising, because I wouldn't fall super far behind. I was able to, stick with the curriculum, and a lot of my classes transferred over credits wise, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll do the business side of fashion stuff. And then my school offered a 1-year MBA program, and my parents, of course, were like, you might as well do it. You've done 4 years. Most MBA programs are 2 years. If you can knock it out in 1, just do it. And so I was like, okay.
So you just did it. I mean, it's a good thing to have on, I guess.
Master's of Business Administration.
Yeah.
I don't regret doing it. I just wish I had the hindsight now. Now that I have the hindsight of knowing, what I'm good at, and I never thought of film stuff, which is crazy because I worked at a movie theater when I was in when I was in high school, then all through college, and then when I graduated, the movie theater actually asked me if I wanted to take over a theater and be the head manager. They were expanding to another one. And
that would almost be more in line, but it's good you didn't, obviously.
Yeah, so I guess the signs for film stuff were there, but it's not something I was ever considering as a career.
Right.
And but that's my kind of college portion of my life in a nutshell.
Was there ever a time where, you're with these people who are passionate about what they're learning, and you're just like, why can't I find that? Because it still seemed like you liked fashion merchandising.
Right.
Did you enjoy that, or were you still just kind of going with the flow?
I was going with the flow.
Yeah, going with the flow of life.
I was not paying attention in my class. I paid attention and I got good grades.
But
I
it
always knew
wasn't
how
like,
to get
I
good
can't
grades.
wait to do this for the rest of my life.
I was not engaged. I was trying to party. I was partying 4 nights a week. I was living the very stereotypical college life.
Right.
This is a much different George back then than who I am now.
Yeah, I don't know that,
but
George.
You don't know that, George. But yes, I had that phase that I had to kind of go through. And you could say if we move on to the next chapter of my life, I got smacked in the face with reality very, very harshly as soon as I graduated.
So before we move on down your story, down the path of your story, if there's somebody like an 18-year-old right now that's doesn't know what they want to do with their life, or that doesn't know what their major should be, or if they should go to school, they haven't found their passion yet.
Right.
Like, what would you recommend for somebody that's like trying to figure that part of their life out?
I would recommend not going to college, and I would recommend getting a job in the real world, because that is going to be your biggest life lesson right there, is getting put to the test. Because once you start working jobs, you find out very quickly, do I like this? Do I not like this? Can I see myself doing this for either a long period of time or the rest of my life? So I almost wish there was like some sort of a rule that made you, have to skip a year when you graduate high school before going to college.
Yeah.
Because the majority of kids don't know what they want to go to school for, and they get sucked in that trap that I got sucked into of just having to pick something. And then you find out in your second or third year that, maybe I want to switch majors. My brother actually switched majors too. Yeah. And it's like, damn, now you just wasted a year or two.
And
if your credits don't transfer, and you're kind of stuck. And that's a lot of money. And most colleges are not cheap nowadays. Yeah,
definitely. That's like the best decision I made was to not go to school. I knew I wanted to dance, and luckily, I thought I had a clear path of what I wanted to do when I was 18.
Yeah.
Not anywhere, I'm not doing anything really that I was doing back whenever I was 18. But, yeah, I agree with you that the best experience is like real life experience, and save the money. If anything, save the money, because that shit is going to come back
off like crazy.
That shit is going to come back and bite you in the butt. Like, and you might feel like you're losing time by not going to college right away, but you're actually gaining so much time, because most of the time you don't end up doing what you want to do anyway. So in the end, it actually works out for the better, instead of going to school, and wasting all that time. And also, you can go to school at any time in your life.
That's true.
We can still go back to school. I could go to school if I wanted to.
You could.
College will always be there.
It ain't going nowhere.
And if you want to spend that money one day when you know what you want, then that's awesome. But if you don't know yet at 18,
it's a waste of money.
It's going to be there for you when you know. So let's move on. So you went through college, you did the party thing. You're like, okay, I'm just going to do this because, you know, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to pick a path. This is, I think, what I want to do. So after college.
Yeah.
I feel like, because I never experienced the life of like getting done with college and be like, woohoo, accomplishment, and then being like hit with the real world, or like having to find your way. I feel like we aren't really taught how to navigate that right out of college. It's like, oh, here's your degree. Good luck.
Yeah, yeah.
How was that? Like finding a job?
Hated it. Miserable.
What did you do? Where did you go?
I pretty much...
did you move back home?
Did I move back home?
In the meantime?
Like very briefly while I was applying for jobs. I had work. I was doing like multiple things. I was working at a Finish Line in a mall, and I was working at the movie theater. And then while I was in college, I was doing sports stuff for the college. I was like juggling 3 jobs basically all through college. Anyways, when you're in college, they prep you by just making you beef up your LinkedIn, and there are certain companies that do hire people
directly from your school.
Like QVC is a big one. Like QVC hires a lot of people from that school that I went to.
Very cool.
Spencer's, same thing. I did interview at Finish Line in Indiana.
Wow.
Which was pretty crazy. They paid for me and my dad. They put us up in a hotel room, and I did the interview, and it was for some job that I was completely underqualified for. And it was like a data analysis job.
Oh my goodness.
And like, I was like, well, it's Finish Line. You know, that's cool. This was my first big interview. I'm super excited. Finish Line. There's not a ton of sneaker companies. I bombed it so hard. I remember getting to the interview and sitting down, and they handed me like 3 pages worth of like math problems.
Oh
and,
my.
Like, I immediately looked at it and was like, I'm not getting this job. There's no way this is happening. I knew. I was like, I don't know any of these answers. Like, I'm totally screwed. And then I got interviewed by like 3 ladies, and they just roasted the shit out of me.
Really?
Yeah, it was so bad. Yeah, it was really, really bad. They didn't roast me, but they just asked me a ton of questions that I had no idea how to answer. Like, It was so bad. It was the worst.
I wish I had a video of that, but
Yeah. So that happened. The other thing that happened, which I'm 99% sure I told you, I interned during my last semester of college while I was in my MBA program for Sneaker Villa,
yes,
which is now just, I forget their name now, the Villa or something. And I was an assistant buyer for them, which was cool. Basically, I was going down the path of buying or being an assistant buyer.
Yeah.
And I worked for this guy, and basically it was not a good internship. I was there twice a week. Many times I would show up. My boss wouldn't even be there. He didn't have anything for me to do. I was kind of having to like fend for myself. And then basically they had an open position when I graduated, and it sucked because there was this girl I went to school with and her mom worked in the company. So like I kind of had like an in.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to get it because I had this other lady in the company kind of hyping me up. Anyways, they ended up hiring somebody else. So that was a heartbreak. Then the finish line thing happened. That was a heartbreak. I was like, oh my God, this sucks. And then I ended up getting a job for Spencer's, the store at the mall that sells all the goofy stuff.
My like parents like would not let me go in that store.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. And then that job was another horrible experience. I got hired by this lady, and I had some friends working in the company, which was cool. I'm like, okay, this is going to be fine. And then I get there, I get interviewed. The lady's kind of tough, but she's cool. She's like got tattoos and stuff. And I'm like, it's a hip company.
Yeah.
Trendy
definitely.
company, even in the
You'd
on the
fit in
corporate
there.
level.
Yeah.
It was all women that worked there. So I was like, I don't know. But I knew a bunch of the girls that worked there from college.
Yeah.
And then the rumors started of, oh, you got hired by that boss. She's the tough one. Good
You're
luck.
like, shit.
And I'm like, damn, like, and I didn't just get hired to be her assistant. I got hired to be her assistant's assistant. And the first assistant,
How does that even work?
there was basically two of us. Her
So
portion
whatever
of the
her
store that she was
assistant
buying
didn't want to
for.
do, you got the shit.
Yeah, we were splitting the work, but the problem was that she had also only been hired like 3 months before me.
So she didn't know what she was doing.
She didn't know what the hell she was doing, and it was her job to teach me everything. And I remember like the first week, I knew like the first day, like of me having to print out reports and stuff like that, just a million spreadsheets. And you think getting into fashion merchandising is going to be like fun, but it's like just a ton of reports and analyzing what sold and didn't sell, and you know, going through a million different people that are trying to send you products. And every Friday we had a mock store and would have to go down and look through these products and decide who we wanted to hit up, and doing purchase orders and stuff. And it was a nightmare. And
So how long did this job last?
2 whole months.
Woo!
And I got fired from my very first corporate job.
Okay,
and,
so you got 3 hits pretty back to back to back.
Yeah.
You got the
Sneaker Villa.
Foot Locker. Was it Foot Locker?
It was
Finish
Sneaker
Line.
Villa that didn't hire me.
Yeah.
Which I still hate you guys for that, because I would have been great at that job. And
The one
second
we've flown
thing was
out.
Finish Line, which was not meant to be. And then Spencer's, which was
Spencer's 2
also
months.
not meant to be.
So at that time, I'm sure you were like, damn, I'm stupid.
Sucking at life right now.
I'm stupid. I'm not, talented. You probably felt like a failure.
And
at
it
that
was difficult because my starting salary, I remember, was 36 grand. And most people that graduated with me were making 40 grand. And I was
So you were comparing to that, of course.
I was comparing to it, but then when I got my apartment in Atlantic City, this was like my first big boy apartment out of college, living by myself. My rent was like $1,700, I think. No, it might have been less. I don't remember. It was something like that. Yeah. And then paying my loans back $800 a month. And I remember after, car payment and stuff, it was like, with that pay, I have like $200 left over. And I'm like, this is what I went to school for? Like, this is the path. This is the path that I did everything correctly. I had great grades in college, had great grades in grad school. I get hired by what you think is a great job, not against the company. There's nothing wrong with the company, but like, damn, like
going down the corporate world.
I went down that road that is the standard in America, and I was barely able to afford to live, and I was like, wow, this sucks.
Yeah.
And now it's time to really figure shit out because I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Damn. So for me, I feel like, we'll relate on the rejection part because like growing up, getting into different dance programs and stuff like that, like it was like no after no after no after no.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like that takes time to work through, and it kind of like puts some wounds like in you to, especially as a kid. I feel like you carry those with you your whole life. Yeah. Kind of like, that moment of rejection or those moments of rejection, like really make you feel like shit for a long time.
Yeah.
So
definitely felt like shit.
How did you get out of that?
I didn't. I lived in that headspace for pretty much all of my 20s. I did not have a fun 20s. I did. I shouldn't say that. But the next step was then moving back home, which is embarrassing because I lived in that apartment for 2-3 months on my own doing the big boy adult thing. And then I get fired and I have no choice but to break my lease and move back home and try and figure out where I can get hired. So I got into car sales because I had always been doing, working in sneaker stores and retail, other stores.
So you were good at sales.
I'm kind of good at sales.
Yeah.
And there was a dealership not far from my house at home that was selling Fords. My dad's a Mustang guy. They had a nice like sign-on bonus. And I was like, you know what? Forget this thing that I went to school for. I can do this. And the other thing that we haven't talked about yet was, when I started getting into music, which was my senior year of college. So I wasn't like, I have to make it in the corporate world. I was like, I just had to make money and start getting my music thing to kind of pop off.
So the music was like the real drive to like.
Yeah, but
that was your real passion.
Yes, but that didn't start until my senior year of college.
Yeah.
I had like an epiphany when I was out on a boys trip at the beach with my friends. And I remember being on the boardwalk and just kind of like it like snapping into like this mode of like, okay, I'm going to graduate college in a year. This was the summer before my senior year. Like, holy shit, life is setting in. I have to get a job. What do I really want to do? And I had always been into hip hop music and stuff like that. And, my dad was a musician in a Greek band. So I was like, well, I've seen my dad do music and be an entrepreneur. I was like, the other thing that happened on my way home from that beach trip, I stopped by my friend's apartment in Philly, and the beach trip was in Atlantic City. I drove home, made a pit stop in Philly, went to my buddy's apartment, and he had this program called Personas Studio One, which is like, it's like Pro Tools and Logic. And I was like, show me how to use it. And he showed me how to use it. And then I went home and I bought a microphone and I went to Guitar Center and kind of started recording myself on my laptop and going into my senior year of college. And that's where my first tracks kind of started that were horrible. I'm sorry for everybody that was friends with me back then that had to listen to that stuff.
No, your stuff is good. Maybe not your first stuff, but.
Yeah. In the beginning, it was not good. I mean, I didn't know how to record myself. I didn't know anything about anything, EQing and all that sort of stuff. It took a lot to kind of figure that part out, but.
So with having music in mind, did you tell anybody, hey, like I'm going to get a job, but I really, really want to do music?
Everybody knew. That became my identity like my senior year. I was recording with a lot of people in college. But obviously not really making any money doing it. Just, starting to do shows, having fun. It was enjoyable.
Did you get good feedback from your friends? Like, was it?
Nobody told me to my face back then, yo, you suck. Like,
you didn't
but
suck.
I knew, listening back now, I'm like, oh God. It took me like a good 4 different projects before I finally started liking my voice and my sound and the way I was engineered and stuff. But so then, early 20s, I was selling cars, getting back to what we were talking about. And I started just stacking that money and going to a studio. in Reading. I stopped recording myself. I was recording myself for 2-3 years, and then I was like, finally started making money selling cars, and that's how I started affording to be able to go to a studio. And then at the same time, my friend Jordan, who me and him started a group together, and we were doing shows all over the place. And there was a period where his cousin was managing us, and we were going to Baltimore every other weekend and recording in Baltimore. And I had a song called Reading, PA that hit, and it didn't like go massively viral, but in my town, it put me on. Like, it made people go. I remember, like, on Facebook, the post like exploded. People even in Philly were sharing it, and a bunch of people had like over a couple hundred shares, and I was like, holy shit, like, I'm blowing up, guys, like, going crazy. And then we did the music video, and Sneaker Villa, the same company that didn't hire me, ended up taking the music video and putting it in their stores. Which for me at 23 or whatever
was a big deal.
Was like, holy shit, I'm coming up in the world, you know what I mean? And that was like 23, 24, selling cars, doing the music thing. That kind of became my identity. I wasn't too worried about the fashion stuff. The way I was incorporating fashion stuff was being able to start developing merch and things like that, and branding, and getting into starting a website and starting to brand myself.
Yeah.
So there were good aspects of what I went to school for, and I was able to implement things that I learned into, what I was doing with music and stuff. And it felt like things were happening and whatever. And, that's when I ultimately made the decision to move to California.
And you were, 25, right?
I was 25. Yep. I had been selling cars for about a year and a half. I was hitting my streak, hitting my bonus every month. I was doing really good. And I had come out here summer 2014 for the first time. I had only 2 friends that lived out here. One was an actor, one was a photographer. I came in 2014, saw California, got my first little taste, came back 2015. I went to this thing called the ASCAP Expo, which was this huge expo full of songwriters and producers and important people in the music world. And that's what really kind of blew my mind. I saw like thousands of people that were either artists or in the music world. And I was like, holy shit, like, I'm either going to New York or I'm going to LA. And I'm tired of shoveling in the snow, and I'm tired of the cold winters. And I was like, Cali sounds nice. Let's figure it out. So I ultimately applied for jobs at a Ford dealership out here, and I was able to finesse my way in. I put on my application. I was already living in California. And then when push came to shove, they finally said they were going to hire me. I had to tell them, I'm in Pennsylvania, but I'm in the process of moving, kind of faking it a little bit. But because my sales numbers were good, they had no reason not to hire me. I already knew the product. I was already leagues ahead of people they were hiring with no car salesman experience, or car sales experience. So like I already had a year and a half of valid experience. So they hired me, and then that started that part of
crazy. So just for anybody listening, I think this is a good example that like you can have a goal and a dream, and like to get there, it's not always
not A to B.
It's not A to B. There's going to be so many ups and downs, and we're going to continue on, and you'll see how many different paths George has taken to get, to where he's able to work for himself full time. Like it has been
easy.
Sometimes you just got to take the jobs to like get where you want to be. Like obviously George didn't move to California or LA to be a car salesman, but it is what got him here to pursue a career in entertainment. So, just keep that in mind. It's not just like, oh, I'm going to be a professional dancer, and then you just show up and start doing it. There's a lot of like hard work, and you have to, if you really want something, it takes a lot of time, and you have to stay dedicated.
And you have to kind of look at your life as seasons. I think is very important for anybody listening to this. Is I knew I wasn't ever planning to be a car salesman for the long term. Even when I took the job, I was going into it with the mentality that I can make money and save money while I figure out my next move. This is a good
Right.
money-making opportunity that I can save up some money until I really figure out where I want to go.
There's seasons is a good way to put it. There's certain things that are meant for certain seasons that will, provide you with different skills and things you need that maybe aren't your dream and your overall goal, but it will help you get to the next step.
Yeah.
So
where do we go from here?
So you come, you're out in LA, you're doing music now, but also selling cars.
Yeah. So I want to try and like condense all this stuff.
Yeah.
But basically, my first year I didn't do much with music because I was working 60 hours a week and I was exhausted whenever I got home. But I did start really, really honing in on my engineering skills. I built a studio in my first apartment.
Nice.
It was, I did the Craigslist thing, lived with 3 strangers, which was a whole experience in itself. That's a whole nother podcast. I ended up eventually 6 months or a year later getting the master bedroom and built a studio in the big closet. It was really funny. So I started slowly having people come over and pay me to record. AG moved out, who was my boy from college, one of my first friends that was a rapper. Shout out AG. And I was like, AG, you're going to be my artist. I'll represent you, and we can both kind of grind together. So that was nice because he moved out there like 3 months after me. So I was like, holy shit, I got a friend out here. Like, now I have somebody to grind with. Sold cars for a full year, quit that job. Then I did Uber for a full year. I was like, selling cars I was like, it was just killing me working so many hours. And I was like, I need time to just focus on my craft and grind and go out and meet people. And so Uber just kept popping up in my brain. And I knew that was a way that I could
in
make
the corporate
money.
Company.
No,
corporate office.
I'm talking about driving Uber.
You drove Uber first.
I drove Uber for a full year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you got hired in their corporate office.
Then I got, from 25 to 26, I was selling cars. 26 to 27, I drove Uber literally for a full year.
Wow.
Just talking to as many people as I could.
Hey, it's a good networking opportunity.
It was a really good networking opportunity. I remember one of the first people I met was like, this was selling cars. I remember I met like Usher's guitar player. This is why you moved to California, because you just run into random people everywhere you go. So everybody I met back when I was 25, 26 was like, holy shit, this person could change my life. I just met Usher's guitar player. Like, Usher's guitar player gives a shit about me. Like, you know what I mean?
No, but like,
back then,
I'm like,
you never know. And it was crazy. So driving Uber for a year was really let me put the time into recording music, booking shows. I started songwriting for this other girl, Julia Bry, that was like on a major label in Russia. And so she started doing shows and bringing me out, and I got to perform in front of like over 1,000 people. And I did a bunch of shows opening up for artists. I got privy to having to sell tickets to open up for bigger artists. And like,
you're your own promoter.
I really was like in the trenches of like grinding out here. And then after driving Uber for a year, that ran its course, and I was tired of that, and I got another full-time job in Uber's office, in their corporate office downtown. And I forget what the title was, but I would message drivers that just signed up to do Uber, and my job was to get them to take their first trip. And that was all I did. I was on a computer just texting people all day.
Yeah.
So pushing people to take their first trip and then calling people. And that was a cool job because it had benefits. It wasn't a high paying job, but that was another season that I was like, I didn't plan to make it up in the Uber ranks. Like I just knew I was tired of driving my car, and I was putting a shit ton of miles on my car. So I was like, let me do this. It just felt suitable at the time.
Yeah.
And then from there, I worked with my buddy Ezra, who you know, and I worked with him in his digital marketing company for a little bit, for maybe, I forget how many months, 6 months or so. And then I started doing video full time. And then from there, is a wrap. So 2019. It took me from summer 2015 to March of 2019. 4 full years of
in
grinding
LA.
out here in LA.
This is after you spent multiple years working your car salesman, your Spencer situation back in Philly.
Yeah.
This is after that. So it took you about a little over 4 years.
Yeah. What I tell people is when I was 25, when I moved here, I had one goal. And the only goal was to be self-employed by the time I was 30. That was all I had my sights on. That was it. It was like one goal. And I basically ended up quitting my jobs completely and working for myself at like 29 and 6 months. Like 6 months before I turned 30, I was able to say, I'm not driving Uber. I'm not one of those guys that's I'm working for myself. You're secretly driving Uber on the side. No, I was just doing video work, freelancing with clients, getting paid, paying my rent off of just hustling videos.
So before, the video world and everything kind of took off for you.
Yeah.
Which is still difficult, but you're finally finding your groove. Before that, was there ever just a time where you're like, what the fuck am I doing?
Yeah, the whole time. the entire time. There was never a moment.
Were you ever like, should I move home? Did you have like doubts? Were you always like, no, I'm going to stick it out?
I was always of the belief that if I throw darts at a dartboard, it doesn't matter. Eventually, I'm going to hit bullseye.
Yep.
And that was kind of my mentality.
I feel like that's definitely a good analogy of your life up until video.
I remember, I remember there was a girl I was talking to back then, and she didn't like all the stuff I was doing. And she was like, you're doing too many things. Like, you need to just pick one. And I'm like, no, like you got it fucked up. Like,
no,
I'm going to fucking pop off one way or another. Like, it doesn't matter what the medium is. This is what I came to realize is that it wasn't the medium. I enjoyed making music. I loved making music. I miss making music.
Right.
But it wasn't that part of it that I was chasing. I was chasing the freedom of working for myself and not having to clock in and out of a job and having a lack of a better word, a dickhead boss, breathing down my neck. So eventually, obviously me and that girl did not last. And but that was, I specifically remember having that conversation, and it's something that's always like burning me. Like, no, that was where the idea kind of formed. Like, no, I had to do these things. Like, I was booking shows, selling merch, building websites for people, recording people. I was writing for somebody else. Yeah. I was doing like
so
10
many
things. Like, probably that's just off the top of my head. Like, I was managing AG and doing his whole thing. Like, I was like, he's going to pop off. The girl I'm writing for is going to pop off. I'm going to pop off. Something is going to happen. We're going to make it selling merch. Then the video stuff started happening. And that's when I really actually started making real money.
Right.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I can work with this.
Right.
So. And even that whole first year of doing video, it was just me and my friend. And we were both shooting, both editing, both doing both sides of it. And even that whole first year, I was like, I don't know what my role is. Am I better at operating a camera? Do I like editing more? Do I like taking photos? Do I like editing photos?
Yeah.
I got into making beats for a minute. Before the video stuff took off, there was a period where I went ham. And I remember I went to Greece that summer, and like, I went super hard making beats, like right before the video stuff popped off. Like, so it was crazy. Yeah. I was just trying to do it all. I was just trying to be creative, and one way or another, I knew eventually something would work.
Yeah. Now I know you had multiple different jobs that made you learn so many different skill sets, whether you liked them or not. Do you feel like you've used all of those random jobs, things you've learned along the way in your current position now as a business owner?
Yeah. I would say there's not everything that you do. You have to look at it like there's no L's. It's just lessons.
Lessons.
And that's one of my favorite sayings. No L's, just lessons. because everything that you do, it's not wasted time. You learn something, or at least you should have learned something and taken something away from whatever experience you just went through. And you use that to become smarter and to evolve as a person. So all of these things, like when me and you started Boyfriend's Closet, you're like, I got these hoodie designs. Like, I want to, figure this out. And I'm like, well, guess what I used to do? I used to build clothing websites. So let's go.
And
skill I haven't tapped into in 5 years. But I'm like, I remember how to do that. Sure, let's do it.
Yeah. And like, even like your sales experience, we do sales technically every single day to get clients. Like, so many things that you guys don't think align. So like, you need a lot of skills.
Selling cars was
owning a business, if that's what you want to do, and work for yourself. Like, all of those things you learn from other companies. You even learn what you don't want to do, like how you don't want to operate. There's so many things. And I feel like you probably, from somebody in your life, whether it's family, friends, whatever, they're probably like, George, you keep changing paths so much.
It was insane.
Did you ever like question that? Like, why am I?
It was insane. I was out of my mind in all of my 20s. I felt like I didn't have an identity. I was just going so hard. I knew the music thing had an expiration. I was like, I don't want to be that rapper in my 30s trying to make it. Like, that's embarrassing. So I was like, I got till 30 to really figure this out, or I might have to go get another job somewhere. Like, and that thought just like killed me. I'm like, I can't see myself working for anybody. Like, I'm not that type of human to be able to clock in and sit at a desk. I'm not good at focusing. Like, I'm good at focusing.
You're meant to work for yourself.
But like, I'm just much better off being on my own. So work-wise.
So here you are at 34.
34.
I would say you're successful at what you've done. You've name off some credits just
my God.
People can.
Well, at this point, I've edited about 20 movies ish, give or take. I've overseen probably the full post-production on 30, 40 movies, I think, somewhere in that ballpark.
Check out his IMDB. It's all there.
Yeah, I've done a ton of movies for Hulu, for BT. The biggest project I ever worked on was A Tear in the Sky, which was a sci-fi documentary with William Shatner. You should check it out. Number 2 doc in the country 2 years ago. I've shot all sorts of big artists. I've shot Neo in concert, Soulja Boy, Steve Aoki. I've been on sets with Lil Wayne and Takeoff and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. Those are some of the notable things, I would say.
Yeah. So it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
To at least get on the path, and you're still not done.
Yeah.
Every day we have our challenges in our business that, know, there's ups and there's downs.
Yeah.
But you're not working for anybody else.
Nope.
I would say you made it.
I'm glad you think so.
You kept that promise to yourself, that you were going to work for yourself.
No, we made it.
Yeah, we've made it, but it's not done, and there's going to be ups and downs, and there's always something else that we're chasing.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to ask you is, if you have any advice for people that haven't landed where they or maybe they have doubt that they're not going to land where they want, because I'm sure that feeling of like, what the F am I doing? What am I doing with my life? I'm not good enough. I'll never be good enough. I'll never find what I want to do. Like, for people like that are thinking that in their head, maybe they are older, maybe they're younger, maybe they're
I can answer it. There's 2 parts. The first is, don't do something work-wise because you think it makes sense. Do what you are passionate about, which a lot of people, I think, get wrong. They don't know what they're passionate about. And if you don't know what you're passionate about, that's fine. But think about, like, that's the hardest question you have to ask yourself in life. What do I want to do? What is my identity? Who do I want to be? You have to really, really dig hard and dig down deep to figure out what it is.
And to piggyback off of that, I know a lot of you guys listening, you know, are in high school and college, and you get thrown into activities or sports or things that your parents or other people or your friends are doing. And you do it just because it's cool to do.
Right.
When you're young, even in your 20s, like that is the time to explore every option.
Yeah, 100%.
See what you want to do, what you like doing. Don't just do things because other people are doing them. And I think that in the long run is going to lead you towards like that path that is meant for you. So,
well, that was going to be my next point. Was the second thing is to just try different things. Like, don't get hung up on things. And you can't get down on yourself if a situation doesn't work out, or you work a job and it ends up, you end up not liking it. Like I said, to go along with the saying of no L's, just lessons, I call it failing forward. And you just keep, you know, progressing and pushing forward. And it's really just a mindset thing of being like, I'm not going to let this get me down. Now I know, you know, now I have more wisdom and experience. So now I can take what I learned and go into the next situation.
So whenever you are having those down thoughts,
or
when you were having those down thoughts, in that period of your life, how did you get out of it?
I just kept trudging. I just kept saying, look, I always have identified myself as not the smartest person in the room. Maybe this is a self-esteem thing, I don't know, but I never looked at myself as somebody that was super intelligent, and I still don't to this day. And I can't control that. But what I can control is my work ethic.
Definitely.
So what I always tell people is that's what you can control. So go hard. Go as hard as humanly possible. Like, I was a psycho in my 20s, working around the clock. You know, the second I got off work, I was either recording somebody, shooting a video, doing photos, coming up with designs, working on my website. Like, I was constantly trying to do things. And even if it wasn't generating me money, it was making me happy because I was like, well, at least I'm doing what I love to do. That was another thing, you know, when I started doing the music thing. I was like, even if I fail, at least I had fun doing it.
Absolutely.
And I can say I tried it and I did it.
And
you know,
I listen to his stuff now and it's all very good. So I think we should
thank you, baby.
Get you back on the mic sometime for fun.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll do a music situation together.
Yeah.
But
we've talked about it.
So I think we should wrap up there with your story because there's definitely more to talk about. And I think that's the second episode.
Yeah. I would say the last thing I'll say is, once I found editing, it just clicked. It just made sense. Everything in my life kind of started making sense. It was like, holy shit, this is the one thing I knew I could do and make a living doing.
The stars were aligning. The money was better.
Yeah.
You felt good at it. You had
felt
that
like I
natural
had some
knack.
purpose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you're tripping about what your purpose is, just keep pushing, trying things. Eventually, if you work hard enough and keep trying enough things, eventually something will click.
Do you agree that when you find what's meant for you, you'll know?
I think so. It's hard to say because even now with how we're progressing, I might not be an editor forever.
And that's okay. I feel like with that answer, it changes.
I know that it set me up and gave me the skills to work for myself. Mm-hmm. And now with everything that we're doing with GL7, I'm more than confident, especially just having worked, for myself for the last 5 years now. I know what we're capable of.
Absolutely.
And we've been doing it, y'all. Like, we don't market ourselves other than the organic posts on socials, and our business just thrives through word of mouth. And for us to be able to live in a penthouse in downtown LA and to be able to afford it and to be able to afford the lives we're living now, like,
we're very blessed.
I still trip out about, the direction that we're going in. I know it's the right direction, but the fine tuning of it, of the things that we want to do, because we do so many things. But I know that we're on the right path, and that just feels good to feel like we've at least set the foundation.
Yes. Now, last question.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you found your identity now, or are you still searching?
I don't know. Sometimes, yes. I do, for the most part, think I found it. But
It's a hard question.
It's always changing. Like I said, life is full of seasons. That's the one thing that I just keep kind of falling back on. Yeah, I'm glad we're keeping this positive because
Yeah, definitely. We can have a darker episode. No, just kidding.
yeah, we could have dove into the imposter syndrome stuff even more.
I feel like we had to get your story out first.
Yeah.
And then we can dive into it another time because I feel like just after like being with you, I feel like you find a lot of your identity with, in your work.
My work. Yeah. It's a problem.
As that is part of your identity, but that's not your only identity. Like you have so many amazing qualities about you.
Yeah.
Of course I can say that because, I'm your girlfriend and I see you day in and day out. Like you have, your identity is not just your work. It's the values and like the personality that you bring every day, to the table. And I'm not looking at you like George's work. Like I don't even see work when I look at you.
Well, what I will say that makes me happy to think about is that I don't need to have a big following to be able to create a sustainable life for us.
Yeah.
The work that I've done has gotten to a point where we build enough of a foundation and it speaks for itself, and people can go to my Instagram, and even though I don't have 1 million followers, they can see that I do serious work.
Yeah.
And that's good enough. And then with my personality's never changed through this whole thing.
Yes.
Even in being in LA in 10 years.
And that's a bigger identity than anything work resume can be.
Personality's always stayed the same. Things I like. I'm still a hardcore Sixers fan, even though I've been in LA for 10 years.
Yes. Big part of your identity.
Big part of my identity. And
you're creative, you're passionate, you are
thank you, baby.
Dedicated, hardworking, you're trustworthy. So many things that go into who you are.
Yeah.
And that goes for everybody. You all have like qualities about you that, make up your identity that is beyond your success in work.
Yeah.
And as I always say, success is not money based. Success is a word that you can define for yourself.
Definitely.
So success can be, I want to have a family one day and live in a normal town, small house. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I have to be a millionaire,
Right.
So success is different for everybody. And I challenge everybody to question that, what success means to you. And we're still figuring that out.
Yeah.
But we're on a good path.
There's so much more we could talk about.
There's so much
more. But we have to go to a show.
We have to go to a show.
That starts in less than an hour now.
And we're going to have a part 2. So if you guys have any questions for George, make sure to DM me on Unposted Podcast or my Instagram or his Instagram at RealGeorgeL.
Yeah. Because I feel like we didn't even really dive into the nitty gritty of the psychology stuff through it all.
Yeah.
But
yes, that's okay.
Now you guys have a foundation of my story. You get some basic principles.
And I think for people listening,
throughout the years,
people are going to, especially kids, I feel like, that are still figuring out their shit. You're a great example of, the highs and lows of finding your way. Yeah. And I think your story will be super inspiring to people, because I know if I heard that, I'd be like, oh, wow. Okay, this guy did 10 different jobs before he found out what he wants to do. I still am good, crazy. Yeah. So, Unposted Podcast, George Lambriodes.
Liz Bezler.
Make sure to like and rate, be my friend, and give me a rating on Apple or Spotify and YouTube, and subscribe and all the fun things. Yeah. Because it helps this podcast out a lot. But until next time.
Thank you, baby.
Thank you, George, for coming on, and we'll have a part 2.
Yes. I love you.
Okay. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.